All right.
Okay, good. So tonight's talk obviously is on sugar and the sugar industry and how it affects our bodies. You've heard me talk about and mention sugar just about every single one of my talks. So we're going to just concentrate on that tonight. And before I get into the meat of the talk, one of the things I watch a lot of YouTube videos with physicians and healthcare providers talking about lab tests and all the things they do. And I've come to the conclusion that probably the most, the thing that puts you at most risk for chronic disease is elevated blood sugar, chronically elevated blood sugar. So this talk is about how to, we're going to talk about the sugar industry and then some of the things that sugar does to the body. So this is going to work for me again. Okay, so there's always another way to do it. Okay, so if we look at the history of the sugar industry, sugar, come on in. Sugar was first made plentiful and cheaper with slavery. So sugar has a definite history, definite connection with slavery. And if it weren't for slavery, at least for a long time, and I'm not condoning that at all, but that's what made sugar widely available. So the tobacco industry found that when you marinate sugar, tobacco leaves in sugar, that people actually wanted to smoke it. So before sugar came along and they started doing that, cigarettes were really hard to smoke and people didn't like them. And it's a sugar industry that made tobacco as popular as it is, and subsequently causing all the lung cancer that it caused. So it played a key role in the explosive growth of the tobacco industry. It was a marriage of tobacco and sugar that really made the success of that industry. Now, sugar was rationed during World War II, and my mother, used to tell me about that because she went through World War II, but Coke and Pepsi made their products easily available to servicemen, and Coca-Cola even used Japanese and German POWs to work in their bottling plants, which helped their international profile and success. I mean, you couldn't do that now, but they did it back then. And it was this sort of making Coke and Pepsi plentiful during the war that really catapulted their businesses. So towards the end of the war, authorities were touting the value of sugar and candy as stimulants to make our warriors more effective in combat. Now that's like back in the 50s when physicians used to tout cigarettes as having health benefits. I mean, that's how stupid this was. So for much of the 20th century, sugar was viewed for its effect on energy balance, calories in, calories out. So much of this, quote, science was not really science. And it wasn't until the latter part of the 20th century that researchers discovered the impact of sugar on hormones and metabolism. So let me ask you guys a question. Do you believe the calories in, calories out theory? So if you put in 50 calories or 100 calories into your body and you expend that 100 calories, that you won't gain any weight. How many believe that? Nobody. Okay, why? Why don't you believe it?
We tried it and it didn't work.
So, how so?
Yeah. you can cut out a lot of things and still not lose any weight. I mean, it's just, I don't know why it doesn't work. But,
Okay. I mean, okay, you gave it a shot.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
It's more complicated than that. I mean, your body uses calories and you don't know how many calories your body is actually using up. So it's a little more complicated than just calories and how much you're expending.
Yeah, it is more complicated. So the kind of exercise you do might impact that. Well, how about this? And this is something I used to say on my radio show all the time. If you take let's say you take 400 calories of broccoli and 400 calories of white sugar, do you think that has the same impact on your body? Absolutely not. I mean, you take 400 calories of broccoli has a profoundly different impact on your body than 400 calories of sugar. So you can't equate the two at all. So it's not like they're equal because they're calories, because the impact that it has on your metabolism is completely different. So they, at the end of the 1900s, researchers really discovered that sugar really is a powerful impact on hormones and metabolism. We'll go into that a little bit tonight. So remember I don't know, how many of you were around when the whole theory of excess fat in the diet is what caused people to get diabetes and to gain weight? Anybody remember that? Yeah, I remember that. Okay. I remember in the 80s, the big thing was complex, you needed to, if you wanted to lose weight, eat carbohydrates and get fat out of your diet. I remember that. Yeah, that was completely untrue. Completely. I remember people would go out and, get baked potatoes. They wouldn't put any butter on it, and they thought they were doing themselves a favor. That stuff didn't work, okay? And so this theory about carbohydrates was really propagated. It was propagated by prominent physicians, paid for by the sugar industry, and was assumed to be true. So sugar was sort of exonerated, and it was fat that was the culprit. But we found out that was just the opposite. How many of you have found that out by, the more fat you eat, the more weight you lose? Anybody ever seen that? Or having a high fat diet, you tend to lose weight? I mean, that's how I stay lean. I have a pretty high fat diet. And because why doesn't fat cause weight gain? Let me ask you that. Why is that? Anybody know? Why does sugar cause weight gain, or white bread cause weight gain, and fat doesn't? Why? Who knows?
It's utilized differently in your body.
Okay, how? You knew I was going to ask you that, didn't you? So how? Why doesn't fat cause weight gain and sugar and refined carbohydrate does? Nobody knows. Okay. Yes.
Don't carbs hold water? So when you eat carbs, water attaches to the carbohydrates and then it stays in your body longer?
I would say that's a pretty good guess. Okay. But it ain't the right answer. But Lee, you gave it a shot. Okay. So it has to do with insulin. Anything that raises insulin in your body, keeps insulin high, is going to drive fat into your cells and keep it there. It's all about insulin. Okay? Fat does not raise insulin. So that's why the number one most important test that I do on a blood panel is insulin, because that tells me more about somebody's health than just about anything else. Triglycerides is way up there too. But your insulin levels. So if your insulin levels are high, I know you're eating a lousy diet, you're storing a lot of fat, and it's going to be hard to lose weight. It's all about insulin, okay? So in the 1950s, the American Sugar Refining Company launched an advertising campaign stressing how important sugar was for children. They stressed sugar was an indispensable food in any diet. I mean, of all the stupidity and how many of you ate a lot of sugar when you were a kid? I did, yeah, plenty of sugar, you know? This is one of the reasons why. And my parents limited it quite a bit. Of course, we didn't have any money either, you know, so we couldn't afford it. So that was a pretty big deal. The sugar industry actually convinced that, remember when there was that big brouhaha about saccharin and cyclamates back in the 70s, you know, caused cancer? You know, that was not based on any credible evidence. That was based on the sugar industry trying to get rid of cyclamates and saccharin because they didn't want that competition. Had nothing to do with the fact that it caused cancer. I mean, they were giving huge amounts of saccharin to rats to try and produce cancer. Way, way, way more than any could ever eat. Well, you know, if you tell somebody, you know, water's good for you, but if you feed somebody, you know, 3 gallons of water in a very short period of time, you know, they're going to die because their electrolytes will be diluted. So they were giving these rats huge amounts of these sweeteners. And then if one of the rats developed cancer, that's what they did the whole campaign on. It was basically the sugar industry that was doing that. Now here's something really interesting, is that there was 3 very prominent Harvard professors that were paid by the sugar industry to promote sugar. So Dr. Frederick Stare, who chaired the Department of Nutrition at Harvard, played a key role in defending the sugar industry and disseminating propaganda, but what people didn't know, that he was being paid by the sugar industry to say that. Now, who's going to argue, especially back in the 60s, who's going to argue with the Harvard professor? Nobody. Nobody's going to question that. And so he was the first one. Then another Harvard-based nutrition scientist was Mark Hegsted, who helped formulate the U.S. dietary guidelines promoting low-fat foods. I saw him once on TV a long time ago. It's probably early 80s, maybe in the 70s, and he was just a real jerk on TV. I mean, he was just really contained. There's this other guy debating him, because the other guy was speaking the truth about sugar, and this guy was just like, you know, poo-pooing all of his arguments. And I remember him saying, look, there's nothing wrong with sugar. It's a fun food. Well, that's true. It is a fun food. It's a fun food that'll make you sick and fat. Okay? So he was a real cantankerous, argumentative guy. So here's another player, Howard Moskowitz, another Harvard-trained scientist, created the bliss point in processed foods, which is a combination of salt, sugar, and artificial flavors, and you could say fat, designed to get people to overeat. So how many of you guys have ever sat down in your life at some point and just like eaten a whole bag of potato chips, something like that? I mean, probably all of us have done something that stupid, you know? Why do we do that? Why do we keep, because the food industry designs food to be addictive, okay? How many of you have sat down and eaten like, you know, a whole bag of cauliflower? And nobody does that, you know? I mean, I like cauliflower. I don't even do that, you know? And so it's because cauliflower doesn't have that bliss point that just makes it addictive, okay? And so this is a guy that that created that whole system of making processed food addictive. And he says the mind knows not what the tongue wants. Okay, so from 2015 to 2020, dietary guidelines for Americans, they recommended restricting sugar to 10%, or 10 to 12 teaspoons of your total daily calories. I mean, even this amount can cause problems. How many of you eat 12 teaspoons of sugar a day? Anybody in here eat that much? Man, I don't. I couldn't eat that much. I can't even drink 1 can of Coke. So then the National Institute of Health recommends 9 teaspoons for men and 6 teaspoons for women. I guess that's the maximum. But I don't even eat 6 teaspoons of sugar a day. Does anybody else? I mean, I guess if I had a huge bowl of ice cream, that might be 6 teaspoons, but I don't even eat that much. So the sugar industry's answer to all these limits that were put on sugar that I just showed you was to do another study. And they did a study that refuted these recommendations. And guess who did the study? It was the International Life Sciences Institute, made up of Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, Hershey, Mars, Nestle, and Pepsi. Okay? If you look at most of the studies done on food, most of the studies in this country done on food are done by companies like this. Not all of them, but most of them. Okay, and anytime you see a study that promotes sugar or promotes something that you don't think is healthy, you need to look at the author and find out who's paying that author. Who does he work for? That will tell you a lot. Okay, a study published in 2016, which reviewed 20 studies published between 2001 and 2016 to examine the link between funding and study outcomes. Of the 60 studies, the 26 that found no link between sugary drink and obesity or diabetes were all funded by the beverage industry. Okay, one study came to the highly unlikely conclusion that eating candy may help prevent weight gain. I mean, that just defies common sense. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like, do you really need a study to determine whether people are going to die if they jump off a 20-story building? You don't need a study to show that. Well, it's like this. Why would you need a study to show that candy prevents weight gain? The source of the study was the National Confectioners Association, representing all the things I used to eat when I was a kid. Okay, so Coca-Cola and Pepsi-backed research came to the conclusion that drinking diet soda is more helpful to weight loss than pure water. I mean, again, it defies common sense. So what's wrong with diet soda? Anybody know? What's wrong with drinking?
Sugar. Artificial ingredients that are harmful.
Yeah, what's it harmful to?
Everything.
It's harmful to your nervous system. Yeah, your brain, your nervous system. It really has a negative impact on your central nervous system. You should never drink that stuff.
Doesn't it make you crave sugar more?
Yeah, it does. It actually, here's an interesting thing they found with these artificial sweeteners, is that when you start drinking that, the body senses that, and it actually starts to raise insulin in response. Okay, and guess what? You gain weight. So people that drink a lot of these diet sodas, they end up gaining just as much weight as they would if they were drinking the regular sugared sodas, because your body senses that it's sweet, insulin starts to go up. It's a crazy thing. So if Americans followed the new sugar guidelines, it would cut the junk food companies' profits by 50%. Okay, the guidelines I just showed you, 6 and 9 teaspoons of sugar a day. So they don't want that. So let's look at complications of excess sugar and its physiological impacts. First of all, let me ask you a question. Do you think that people eat too much sugar in this country?
Yes.
Of course.
Okay, so why do you say that? Why do you think that?
Marketing campaigns.
Okay,
It is-
marketing.
It's in everything.
It's in everything, just about.
Very convenient.
Convenient, okay, yeah. And it's not in asparagus, but it's in just about everything else. So anybody go to the grocery store and ever look at what people put in their carts? I mean, it's just stunning to me. They have all these big 6-packs and 12-packs of soft drinks hanging off the end of their cart. You know, they conveniently put it on the edge of their cart. And I go, how do these people even survive? How do they function drinking that stuff? All that stuff. So you get complications of excess sugar. Number one is diabetes. We all know that. Too much sugar, diabetes. Number two, impaired learning. A UCLA study shows that a diet high in fructose can impair the ability to learn and remember. Okay, tooth decay. We always taught that when we were growing up. Heart disease. Why would eating too much sugar cause heart disease? Anybody? Anybody know why? Nobody knows. Okay. Yes.
Clogs the arteries.
What?
Can clog the arteries.
Yeah. Do you know why?
It has something to do with your valves. If it clogs the arteries, then your valves aren't working efficiently, right?
Well, it actually makes your blood and your platelets stickier. They tend to adhere to the walls of the artery. Okay. And what happens when your blood and your platelets get sticky and they adhere to the walls of your artery? What sticks to that?
Cholesterol.
Yes, good job. Good job. That's exactly right. Cholesterol. So the idea, the pharmaceutical industry said, okay, if that's happening, we need to get rid of cholesterol. Well, cholesterol's like the 5-year-old who gets caught with his hand in the cookie jar when all of his siblings run off and the mother comes in. So cholesterol's not the culprit, okay? And I do a whole talk on why cholesterol is important, but it's sugar, it's refined carbohydrates. So asthma is another one. 2012 Australian study, children who drank more than half a liter of soft drinks per day, that's a lot, were significantly more likely to suffer from asthma or cardio-obstructive pulmonary disease. The greater the consumption of soft drinks, the more likely an individual is to suffer from one of these respiratory conditions. Okay, so what does sugar do to the body? It causes chromium and copper deficiencies. It interferes with the absorption of calcium and magnesium. Why is that important? Why is that important to know that? Anybody?
Because your body needs those things.
Yeah, okay, so calcium is pretty important for heart function, for bone formation. Just about every enzyme, I'll get to you in a second, Randy. Just about every enzyme process in your body requires magnesium, okay? So if you, and when you eat too much sugar, that's excreted in the urine, okay? So you won't get those minerals. So one of the things you're going to notice right off is you're going to start getting muscle cramps over time because you need magnesium for normal muscle function. Yeah, Randy?
Don't they say that magnesium can help your muscles relax? And if your insulin is high and your blood sugars are high, then that'll maybe format worse sleep. And then they say magnesium supplement can help your muscles relax better for sleep.
Yeah, sure it can. Really, magnesium is really important. Sugar feeds cancer cells. And I did a talk on cancer about 2 months ago. But if you want to feed cancer, eat a lot of sugar. Okay. Does anybody remember anybody at the cancer talk? Remember the name of the guy who actually discovered, not promoted it, but discovered the diet cancer connection?
Hitler.
What?
Hitler.
No, Hitler was the one who wanted to find it out.
Okay.
The guy that discovered it was Otto Warburg.
Oh yeah, Warburg.
Yeah, probably one of the greatest scientists of all time that nobody's ever heard of. Okay, so so you feed cancer with sugar. Okay, the drain on antibody production to deal with these cancers depletes our immune function. That study was published back in 2002 by the Journal of National Cancer Institute. So sugar causes a lot of problems with GI function. increased risk of Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, malabsorption. It causes your digestive tract to be too acidic. There's a lot of people that if they would just stop drinking soda, they would find out that a lot of their health problems would just disappear. A lot of their health problems get a lot better. Too much sugar in our diets will change the gut bacteria, which will alter our moods in a negative manner. So it can cause depression and anxiety. And a lot of the immune system issues that we have, and a lot of the mental problems that we have in our culture are due to our gut bacteria, our microbiome is just thrown out of whack by what we eat. And that feeds back into the brain through the vagus nerve, which I do a whole talk on the vagus nerve and the importance of that. It causes premature aging. If you want to guarantee yourself to get wrinkles faster, okay, eat a lot of sugar, okay? Everybody I know that eats a lot of sugar gets wrinkles faster, and I've seen that over and over again. So when sugar hooks onto protein, it creates wrinkles. It destroys the collagen and creates wrinkles. So you don't want to do that if you can. I mean, you want to avoid eating too much sugar. Sugar lowers your vitamin E levels, which can initiate the autoimmune process. Sugar can cause toxemia during pregnancy and contribute to eczema in children. Can impair the structure of your DNA. Sugar can cause pathological increase of kidney and kidney stones. So if you have a tendency to get kidney stones, you really want to look at your diet. What's your diet? What's going on with your diet? How much sugar are you eating? How much processed food are you eating? Sugar lowers the ability of enzymes to function. So we have to have enzymes. If we don't have enzymes that work, we die. So what's the one thing that we know, other than sugar, that destroys enzymes? That you die if this happens to you. It destroys enzymes. Anybody know? It's fevers. The reason you die from a really high fever is because enzymes denature when the body gets too hot. They don't work anymore. Our bodies can't function without enzymes. That's why fevers can kill you, okay? Because what they do to enzymes. Sugar can damage your pancreas. We already talked about compromising your blood vessels. It slows down the ability of your adrenal glands to function. Sugar beats your adrenal glands to death. Too much sugar. So what's wrong with that? What do our adrenal glands do? Some of you ought to know that. You've been in my classes before. What do the adrenal glands do? Nobody remembers? Okay, they produce energy. Okay, they produce cortisol, which helps produce energy. They decrease inflammation. They produce all of our sex hormones, backup for our sex hormones. They do a whole lot of things. Help our body handle stress. So when you beat your adrenal glands down with sugar, you can't handle stress as well. You may not have the ability to create sex hormones as well. A lot of things can happen. So it promotes chronic degenerative disease, can cause epileptic seizures. By the way, that was a study that came out of Townsend Letter for Doctors and Patients, the role of sugar in epileptic seizures. High blood pressure. Okay, so if you have high blood pressure and you're eating a lot of sugar, you need to back it off. May induce cell death, increase your risk of gout. What is it about sugar that increases your risk for gout? That's a tough question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So if you look at white sugar, what is white sugar made of? You look at the chemical structure of white sugar, what is it made of? Anybody know? Okay, it's a molecule of glucose, and a molecule of fructose hooked together. Okay, so when you eat sugar, the glucose, the sugar is broken, that's broken. The glucose goes to feed energy in your cells. The fructose goes to your liver. And it goes through this really complex process of your liver trying to get rid of it. And in the process of that, it hooks onto protein and produces wrinkles and all kinds of other problems. But it also produces uric acid crystals. High fructose diet produces uric acid crystals and causes gout. Sugar can cause headaches and migraines. Although I will say this, there's some really good research out there that shows that that a lot of migraines, not all of them, because some of them are caused by neck issues. I see that all the time. But you know, if you're consistently getting migraine headaches, you may have a subclinical thyroid issue. Now, what do I mean by subclinical? What does that word mean? Nobody knows? Do you know?
Maybe. Is it that it won't show up on like any test, but there is something wrong?
Very good. That's the answer. Very, very good. Yeah. It means you don't have a disease process that's going to show up on lab work, but there is an issue going on there. Okay, that's what subclinical means. Sugar can increase your risk of Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is called type 3 diabetes. All right. And contribute to chronic spinal pain. Here's an interesting quote. This is from Mercola, Dr. Mercola. He says, for the first time in history, lifestyle diseases, diabetes, heart disease, and some cancers are killing more people than communicable diseases. And treating these entirely preventable diseases costs more than 1/7 of the U.S. gross domestic product. So it stands to reason that simply preventing these diseases could save the healthcare system around $1 trillion a year. So how do you prevent them? Well, you eat a healthy diet, you exercise, you do the right things. This is a Harvard pediatrician wrote a commentary in JAMA offering some suggestions to turn around our diets. Restructuring subsidies, okay? So how would that help? Anybody know? I mean, we know that regulating the marketing of food like breakfast cereal, which is primarily sugar and cheap grain and chemicals, but how would restructuring subsidies help with our disease culture? Anybody know? Anybody here ever hear of food stamps? Okay, you know the number one thing that food stamp recipients buy, number one thing, do you know what it is? Soft drinks. It's the number one thing. And you know why they're able to do that? Because the soft drink industry has lobbied Congress to allow that to continue. Okay? So how about subsidizing corn? Where does high fructose corn syrup come from? It comes from corn. Corn's subsidized by the government. So anything that's subsidized, you're gonna get more of. Okay? They're not subsidizing fruits and vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower. I never heard of a Brussels sprout subsidy ever, you know, but they subsidize corn. Okay, so that's really an important concept. So obviously, regulating the marketing of food to children. Anybody here growing up ever see cereal commercials on TV? Yeah, you want to go out and get it and eat it when you saw it on TV. Yeah, we all did. Like, you know, Tony the Tiger and Frosted Flakes and all of that. Funding school lunch programs. A lot of the lunches are not very healthy, actually. You know, using existing and future technologies to allow the food industry to retain profits while making better, more healthy products. So that's a talk on sugar. What do you take away from this talk? Do you have any questions or comments about anything that I went over? Are you going to change anything? Anybody going to change your sugar habit? I hope so. Okay. Any takeaways or questions regarding what I went over?
How do you make
Yes.
yourself have a better thyroid
Better thyroid?
if you're going to get migraines and stuff?
Okay, so a subclinical thyroid issue is a nutritional issue, and I have a product called Migratol, which is specifically for thyroid producing migraines from thyroid. So that's what I would look at. You know, if I were adjusting somebody and their headaches weren't going away, I would look at their diet and then I would give them that product. That really helps the thyroid a lot. By the way, here's another little gem. No extra charge for this, by the way. Okay. So if your heels are cracking, if you get cracked heels, cracked bleeding heels, you know what causes that? Anybody? I know Carmen knows, but you can't. So you can't say.
Mm.
But what causes that? Anybody know?
Sugar.
No, that wasn't the answer to this question. Good try. Okay, it's thyroid issues. Subclinical thyroid dysfunction causes cracking and bleeding heels. Okay, so if you know of anybody that, and nutrition will fix that. That's not fixed by a pharmaceutical, by the way. So, if you know, and some of you know people that are really suffering from some of the problems that we talked about, you know, give them this information or have them contact me and maybe I can help them. Maybe I can put them in the right direction for not getting sick all the time. Change their diet, give them some nutrition that'll help them, because our society is going downhill. We're slowly killing ourselves. We're the sickest, we're the most overweight, we're the most infertile, the most depressed culture in history. That's where we are right now, and a lot of it's because of what I talked about tonight. And I mean, if you look at the sperm count of men has dropped 70% in the last 50 years. I mean, how are we going to propagate the human race like that? You know, it's not going to happen. So it's you guys' responsibility. Tell your friends. What's my next talk on?
Chiropractic and science.
Chiropractic and science. So in 2 weeks, we're going to do a talk on what is this underlying scientific basis for chiropractic. Is there a scientific basis for what we do? We're going to talk about that in 2 weeks. So anybody else have any questions? Yeah,
So you
Randy?
say